Welcome to Wine Wednesday, brought to you by everyone here and also Loire Valley Wines, which, if you don't know, is a beautiful, idyllic place that many of us hope to be able to visit again one day. I don't know if anyone here has been there before. We have a white from the Loire Valley and also a red from the Loire Valley. And for those who have been with us before, the commercial part of this is wines from the Loire Valley rock. It's one of those places. It's very gifted. It has great soils. It's considered the garden and to some people the Eden of all of France. It has vineyards surrounding the north and the south of a gorgeous river, which is one of the longest rivers. And it goes all the way from the ocean into the center of France. And they use a lot of different grapes to make these wines. And today we're focusing on white wines from the Loire made from Sauvignon Blanc. So hopefully nobody's mad about that. And if you have a glass of Sancerre, I will toast your Sancerre with my Sancerre, which comes from a great producer called Lucien Crochet. But as we just told Lisa, listen, the right wine is the wine in your glass. Thank you, Marcia and Dustin, for drinking in theme. I know Christina is as well. But you know what? Like, you need a lift sometimes. And Sancerre, made from the Sauvignon Blanc grape, can be really, really bright and refreshing. Here's the task at hand today. Many of us have shopped the shopping list, including the boots and the fashion. And many of us have shopped for wines, have those ready to go. And many of us have taken a peek at the recipes for today. So on today's docket are things that are really delicious with Loire Valley wines, as we've done every single week, and we'll keep doing into December. So the Loire, as I said, is sort of like the garden and Eden of France. And we're going to make today a pretty classic thing, and that's going to be poisson au beurre blanc. So if anybody did French class in high school, au lycée, and you want to, show off your French a little bit, poisson au beurre blanc. And not only that, we're not just doing fish, which is poisson. We're going to do salmon, which in French is saumon. So the first thing we're going to do today, after you have opened a bottle, poured yourself some, taken as big a swig as you want. I might take another one. There we go. I feel better. Took a good swig. We're going to start on this Beurre Blanc recipe. So for those cooking along with me, we're following along with a Serious Eats poached salmon recipe, because I love that Serious Eats website. And there are many recipes for Beurre Blanc. Mark and I were talking about a Julia Childs. We love our Julia Childs. She had a fantastic Beurre Blanc recipe, and Mark had mentioned, oh my God, that's a lot of butter. So we're doing the New York Times version of it. And this particular Beurre Blanc recipe is from Craig Claiborne, who was the first critic, I believe, for the New York Times. The first thing I'm going to do is actually get ready to poach the salmon. And we're going to make the Beurre Blanc while the salmon is poaching, because that's going to take a little bit of time. So I've got me a leek. And those leeks can be real sandy. So the first thing I'm going to do with the leek is cut off really most of it. So this green stuff we're not going to use for the poaching, but I'm going to save in a garbage bowl. But it's not a garbage bowl, because I always keep a huge Ziploc bag in the freezer. That's stuff that we're going to use for making vegetable stock later. So I've cut off the top. So here's what I've got left. And then I'm going to cut off the bottom. And both of those parts are going to go into vegetable stock at some point. A lot of my friends know that I love to make vegetable stock and soups on Saturdays, soupy Saturdays. All right. So the next thing I did was I cut my leek in half. And even though we washed this a bit, leeks can be a little sandy. So this guy looks pretty good, but I am going to run both of these halves of the leek in the sink real quick, just to make sure we don't make a whole sandy situation. So I cut it in half, and then I'm going to put this whole thing into what is cold water in this pan. It's 1 liter of cold water where all the poaching is going to happen. Okay, so the next part is I've got a bit of celery. Oh, I have some fresh squeezed lemon juice. So I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of that.
Well, Linda, can we go back to the leek? Like, did you cut off like all of the green top? Because I have this much left.
I cut off a lot of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then cut that in half horizontally, and then just put it into your, what is going to be the poaching liquid.
Oh, you put it in there already? Like whole?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm doing that right now.
So my celery is in slices in the poaching liquid. My leeks are in slices in the poaching liquid. I'm going to take a sip of my Sancerre so those cooking along can catch up. And then I also put in 2 tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice. The next things that I'm going to add to the poaching liquid are a bay leaf or 2. So I'm so lucky because my mom has a bay leaf tree at her house. So we always harvest bay leaves there. But you know, those are easy to find in the store and they always add like a nice complexity and a little bit of green flavor. I'm also now going to add a generous bit of salt because whatever Daniel Britzer says at Serious Eats, I will do. Okay, so all the stuff is ready. It's all in the poaching liquid. You can also add some fennel, but my Instacart delivery person didn't know what fennel was, and so it didn't make it. All right, so we're gonna poach salmon. You can poach any kind of fish. Generally in the Loire Valley, you would find all the different types of white fish, but I love kind of a meaty salmon because today we have not just the Sancerre, which is the Sauvignon Blanc white wine, we also have a red, we have some Gamay. I'm gonna take this piece and just slice it into thirds, and then I'm going to add it into my poaching liquid. All right, so when poaching in this particular recipe, they say to start with the water cold and then get it up to 170 degrees. So I would suggest getting another sip of your white wine if you want to fortify for the next step. So Sancerre in the Loire Valley makes reds and whites. They use 100% Sauvignon Blanc for the whites, which we all know really well, right? So if you're drinking a Sauvignon Blanc with us, you know, you might put your nose in and get citrus, lemons and limes. And definitely with this particular Sauvignon Blanc from the Sancerre soils, you definitely get all of that kind of white rock minerality. It's why it's a great wine with oysters and seafood and shellfish and fish as well. But in the hands of sort of a great Sancerre producer, you also can get some really nice texture, and with aging, that texture also changes a bit. So in Sancerre, they can also use Pinot Noir to make red wines. So if you ever see a Sancerre Rouge, that's going to be generally a Pinot Noir based wine. So a lot like the Pinot Noirs that you love from other parts of the world. I think the interesting thing is a lot of people learn when they're learning about Sauvignon Blanc from different parts of the world, New Zealand particularly, they learn about funny things like, have you ever had a sommelier come to your table and say, oh, do you really get that aroma of pipi du chat, right? Cat pee. That's a common descriptor for Sauvignon Blanc. Ed just looked at me like, really? Yes. Cat pee is a descriptor for Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. I definitely don't get it here. I think this is a really elegant one. We've got the salmon poaching and going. Now we're going to work on the Beurre Blanc, right? So Beurre Blanc, Beurre means butter in French, and Blanc, of course, refers to using a bit of white wine. And we're going to do that great trick of putting a little of the white wine that we're drinking into the sauce. So that makes it kind of a perfect match for the dish. And I'm going to chop 1/4 cup of onions. So that looks like more than 1/4 cup of onions. So it's going in. Here we go. Then I'm going to add white wine vinegar and also Loire Valley white wine.
Belinda, is the butter in there now?
The butter is in there now. I've got onions and butter together at like medium-high heat. I'm just giving it a moment for my 1 tablespoon of butter to melt and get the onions to translucent, which means I can take another sip of my wine. Let's talk about the red, because we would never do a show or an episode with just white wine. We always have to have red too. More is better. So we have a really interesting red. So as I told you, in Sancerre, when they make a red wine, they use Pinot Noir. But in this particular region of the Loire Valley, the Touraine, they make red wines from a grape called Gamay. Has anyone ever had Beaujolais Nouveau? For those who really love Pinot Noir or like Sangiovese, Gamay is a thinner skinned grape, and it makes delicious perfumed aromatic wines. And also because it generally grows in low, acidic soils, it can age really well. And a lot of people in Beaujolais and also in the Loire say that Gamay turns into, right, like a great Burgundy or a great Pinot Noir. over time. All right, so I'm adding now, so my onions are translucent, my butter is all melted, and I'm adding 3 tablespoons or so of white wine vinegar. And then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of my Loire Valley white wine, but any wine will do. You could put red too. I mean, it doesn't have to be Beurre Blanc. It could also be Beurre Rouge. Why not? Reduce it. So Lisa, how mine's like right now at a 6 or 7 out of 9, because I'm going to reduce this concoction with the butter, the onions, the vinegar, and also the wine until all the alcohol is gone. And once that is totally reduced, we're going to add a little cream and we'll be almost done. All right, so I had some white wine. Now it is time to pour a little bit of this Gamay from an appellation called the Touraine. And I love the wines from the Touraine. They make Sauvignon Blanc, they make Gamay. So there's whites, reds, and all kinds of things. And it tends to have like this really kind of white, stony minerality to the wine. It's so nicely balanced. I mean, so amazing. You know, this red, like look at the color. I mean, it's much darker than generally Pinot Noir that we find, but it's got like some richness, but also really nice balance. Oh, it smells so good. I mean, we all had a Cabernet Franc together when we had Chinon, and this is just a completely different beast, but it's also another red wine that's so good for food. Look at Amanda Puck. She's got 2 glasses. I love it. That's my girl. There ain't no shame in that game. You just got to taste everything. That's how we learn. And that's how we get through, you know, what's happening in the world right now. It's not only just about what it tastes like. You know, we love to look at the beautiful colors and sort of appreciate the density of the colors, whether it's opaque or not. And this is quite a young Gamay. So we have all these beautiful kind of pink tones with darker tones in the center. And for the aromas, I'm definitely getting sort of, you know, darker fruits, but there's also kind of a green peppercorn thing. There's sort of like a white rock thing, a chalky thing.
I do love this kind of wine. I love wines from the Loire. I told you that. Like I love Muscadet and like I love every wine we've tried in this series. Morgon, is that from the Loire? And is
Morgon is a village in Beaujolais. So okay. Like they have great names for these villages in Beaujolais, right? Saint-Amour, Chirobe, Morgon, Juliana. So like beautiful romantic sort of names. But, you know, Morgon, I think is one that's a great example of what Gamay can do, right, Jim? You can chime in too if you've had a lot of Morgon. I bet you have. You know, it ages so beautifully. It's so good with food, right, Jim?
Absolutely, and it's such a delight when you can manage to make yourself keep your hands off of it for a few years.
I can't manage that.
But I will say, Jim and Amanda, what's interesting is that, you know, when you go to Beaujolais, there's a lot of dishes that have like lentils and sausages, right? You know, all these kind of stewed meat. And in the Loire Valley, you know, we've been kind of going through all the classic Loire Valley dishes, right? The salads with crottin and goat cheeses and, you know, the oysters and things like that. But they also have a really amazing heritage in charcuterie. When your onions are in this like very reduced vinegar and white wine situation, then we're going to add 1/3 of a cup of heavy cream. Here we go.
Oh my God, your cream is so cute.
Right? Listen, Mark, we are in cocktail kit land.
Wow.
I have a cute
look at Amanda's. Look at Amanda's cream. Amanda's got like a
fancy cream.
Amanda's even labeled so expertly at the
It's
bottom.
Belinda. I didn't do this. Like she's like the bestie ever and my favorite person on the planet.
So impressed.
This little recipe, Beurre Blanc, butter, white, is going to be not for the faint of heart because I'm about to add 8 tablespoons of butter. 8. So right now we want the salmon to be at 170. So mine is 170. So now I'm turning my heat down to like a 4 out of 9. My pieces look really beautiful and they smell so good.
Okay.
So I put some scallion on mine, but you know, the original intent was to put a little chive. I didn't have any.
The sauce is so good.
The sauce is
Oh,
so good. Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Right.
I could put the sauce on everything. Poached eggs, What else can I poach?
I really like it with the Gamay that we both have. We both have the same one, and I think it's like a nice like red wine moment with the salmon and a little bit of green in the
I do too, but I'm really fond of the Sancerre. Like I
Oh.
really like it a lot. That's great. I never would think like, oh, I'm gonna make Beurre Blanc tonight. This was amazing. It's an amazing Wednesday.
Easing into old world wines has been a great transition. So I thank you for your approachability and just the access.
All right, we're gonna get going too. Love you all.
Great job cooking along.
Yeah, that
Thank
girl-
you.
And
That was
cooking
a
along.